What's up YouTube? Today we're going to look at a nitro car from that brand we all know and love, Tamia. This is an NDF-01T. So let's get some quick specs on it as usual. The weight, 2659. That's a bit of a fatty, isn't it? Got a wheelbase of, let's see, 295. That looks like 295, and a width of 295. So it's a square car or truck. There you go. Right, let's have a look at it. As you can expect from Tamia, there's a lot of plastic here. This is an all-round plastic meltdown. Is it suitable for a nitro car? Let's see how they've overcome their design issues. Right, starting at the front, we do have a very interesting setup here. So you've got double wishbone suspension with pillow ball joints top and bottom, and that gives a great amount of articulation. It's one of my favoured systems, I think, for getting that really long, wide range of articulation and no binding or interference in it. So that's decent. You got your classic Tamia plastic damper, non-oil filled, so that's useless. You've got quite a large diameter bearing for your axle here, which is good. So that's got a lot of play in it already anyway, as do those ball joints. I mean, these are typical Tamia tolerances, so they might have these design features, but the tolerances with which they're implemented and the grade of plastic mean that, well, it's just Tamia, isn't it? So they've opted for an aluminium axle here with a universal joint, and as you can see, that's broken, as has the other side, so we'll have to wait till we get to the back. We've got a catastrophic failure there, so that just split the alloy there. You'd think it was the plastic that went, but that broke the alloy. And then you have this impact resistance system, or impact absorbing system, with this third spring. Now this spring isn't in compression, it's used in tension, and the way it's set up is that, look, if you take a front impact on either side here, or both sides, it stretches that spring by splitting apart the whole front suspension, which is quite funny really. You know, you hit something and ooh, it's like a cartoon. You know, when the front of the car opens up to swallow what's in its path. So yeah, that's what Tamia have done there. I mean, in practice, it's true. A lot of people crash their nitro car. They crash it from the front. Being able to take a good whack goes a long way in stopping breakages or ending play for that day. And it's not the first time I've seen that system. I've actually seen this on the Schumacher Cat from the 90s. Had a similar system of absorbing that front impact and hit. So that's a very innovative feature from Tamia there, and interesting how they set that up. So let's have another look. You can push the front wheel backwards and it splits upper and lower wishbone. The spring pulls it back in place. Oddly though, they just deflect this piece of plastic, so I don't really see how it's great design. So you've got the pivot, you've got the spring holding it back, and then you just deflect that piece of plastic. And as you can see, a fair amount of force still gets transmitted into the steering linkage. Enough that this tie rod is bent. So, does it work? Make your own conclusions, add your thoughts in the comments, because this is actually just classic Tamia stuff. On the good point though, I do like these wide wishbones because they themselves counteract most of that load in that direction. And that's one way on, especially on very high performance racing RCs, you see that they use a very wide wishbone like that in order to maintain stiffness and rigidity in that, and strength in that direction. So I think that's a good feature. And again, using a blade type wishbone allows you to form material in a very optimal way for managing those loads. It looks like here they allow 2 mounting points for that ball joint, so you could change to having less caster on the front by having that ball joint in the front position. It's not that common to have different mounting options on Tamiyas, but they do have that there. You've got a ball joint and a very weedy, almost wire-like turnbuckle, but it is adjustable for steering here. Again, that's sort of a typical Tamiya piece, that. And then an odd Tamiya original steering linkage. So let's have a look at that. This is your servo, steering servo. It's got a servo saver built into it. Spring type, Tamia type thing. And that's how it works. So you've got really good limits on that steering. So that's what those pillow ball joint setups allow. It allows you to have that great limit, and that's why you see it on competition buggies, because it allows them to use a high limit on the very tight sections of track, but also generally operate at the lower limits for higher speed. Right, so you've got this central pivot, moves this steering blade, shall we call it? And that's how that works. That's activated at an angle by this servo. So let me know what you think about that. If you see the angles, it does give an Ackermann effect. By that we mean the inner wheel is at a greater angle than the outer wheel, which is what it needs to go around a circle effectively. So that's the steering. I think we'll add this feature in. So we've got this guard, which is well placed to stop stuff being kicked up by the wheels and anything coming to the front of the chassis. I do actually think that's a great feature, and there's no reason why every Nitro RC or general RC shouldn't have lightweight pieces like that. They do generally improve the operation and longevity and general maintenance extremely effectively, just having those simple guards, and that is nice. The chassis, as you can see, is a tub type plastic chassis. Right, while we're looking at this angle, that's your main spur gear. So let's try and turn that. You can see that turning, and you can see a metal universal joint in there going to your front diff. So you've got shaft drive all round. I think it's a fixed center diff. There's your brake pads there. See if we can see them moving on this. You can just about see them moving and clamping. Anyway, that nice wide gear, although it's plastic, if you want to use plastic in a gear and you want to distribute load across it, yep, make it wider, and therefore the transmission load is spread across a longer tooth, and you can get away with that softer plastic material. It's also quieter, substantially quieter than a metal drivetrain, so that might be why they've done that. I like that feature. Yeah, if you're going to use plastic gear, it's not much extra material to add in, but that's how you solve the strength issue, by spreading the load wider. You've got your steering throttle servo, your little box here for your receiver and your battery pack, plastic covers on the gear accessing all that, and on this drive shaft, rear drive shaft cover. Moving to the back of the car, we've got again these nice wide upper wishbones, blade type design. I think they look to be exactly the same as the front ones, so that's a great feature too, meaning that you can have a couple of spare wishbones, but they will cover you for all 4 of those upper arms. Just having one in your spares, you don't have to have front left ones, right rear ones, you just have to have one, and that will get you out of trouble. Again, got these plasticky dampers, and generally you can see the plastic deflection all round. You can see this shock tower just tilting backwards as you put the wheel through its range of motion. However, dynamically it's not unreasonable, that damper and suspension system, and the tune of it, the way it's presented, it's okay. It does serve a purpose. You don't have any adjustments on it, and it's almost certainly going to just break straight away. But that's what you get with your Tamia. What I would say, onto a positive, is these Tamia wheels and tyres, and interestingly they use a 17mm aluminium hex nut, large on that large axle, so that's 1/8 scale dimensions. That's what you're going to get on a 1/8 scale competition buggy. So they've gone a bit overkill there, but you don't use too much weight, and you do get a great clamping system because you've got that larger diameter flange from having a big nut and a larger axle wheel. So that really is a way better locking system to an axle than what you generally find on 1/10 scale things, which is a 12mm plastic hex and a small 8mm nut on the outside. So good feature there. The tyres are high quality. Looked at a lot of RC tyres in my lifetime. You do get a sense of the quality of the rubbers and foams inside them and the type of grip they're going to offer, and these are really decent. Actually, when we do that drop test, I would say a substantial amount of the damping in the suspension system is coming from this this sort of heavier rubber tyre and a decent foam inside, because your tyre is one of your major components of the suspension system. It's often overlooked, but it's pretty important, especially in damping out vibration. That's the rear moving up and down. Something I like is having the pivots towards right to the middle of the car, so they're using the full width available, which gives the most articulation. I like that feature, and I think it looks good too. Very F1 rear end type look there, with your aerodynamic wishbones that go to the centre. That's your differential casing. Let's look at these rear drive shafts. Right, that's the back end. Let's move it up and down for you. Good range of articulation here, a lot of travel. You can sort of see it all flexing, but, and then Tamia tolerances. You've got this tie rod which keeps this and gives you that toe in adjustment on the rear. Let's get a look at that drive shaft if we can. Can we see? Yep, there we go. So you've got this plastic drive shaft. It's telescopic, so let's try and get you to see behind. Right, let's look at the universal joint first. So you've got that larger diameter alloy axle. you've got your steel pin that's engaging with the first part of the plastic shaft, which is telescopic, into this outer telescopic shaft, and then the inner joint there. I'm just going to whip that damper off for you to see, so you can have a look at the telescopic action of the drive shaft. There we can see it. See that? So this part slides into that one as it goes up and down, because it needs a bit of that in-out movement, because the geometry changes as it goes up and down. So that's your telescopic drive shaft. Alright, put that in after. Let's have a quick look underneath. I've got this plastic boat type hull ready for the water. If we seal it up, we could go on an amphibious adventure, I think. Only got to put something over there. Joking aside, tub type chassis is a great way to add that long rigidity across that piece. It's not used much because it costs a lot to manufacture, but a tub is a decent idea. Then they've gone with a metal plate insert for where they deem the stiffness is required, and probably heat dissipation for the engine, so that allows it to soak some heat away and into the chassis. And also the rigidity of the metal gives that mesh between your clutch belt and your spur gear the strength there, so it doesn't flex and mash up the gears. As you can imagine, if it was plastic under continual flex, that would ruin that mesh between those two gears. It's also a pretty convenient way to remove your engine by removing that piece with the engine on it. That's quite decent. Let's look at the front. This is that system again. That's how it works. You've got these pivot pins here and here, and that's how it's splitting apart, ready to eat up any bad guys in its path. On the back, got a nice weedy little Tamia suspension pivot pin there. The tub doesn't extend here, this is a different part, but it is one piece at the front covering that front diff. So that's the underneath. Set to the exhaust. Now that exhaust is actually quite a nice piece of cast aluminium. So it's cast, which means it's got a thicker wall thickness, which is going to have a great damping effect on the sound. A little bit heavier, but I think it's worth keeping that sound down so you can enjoy this as much as possible. You're still going to hear it, but you won't be annoying everyone who's going to stop you using it. And that's a high quality casting, 2-piece, and it's screwed top to bottom, so you could maybe even add some wire wool in there or something if you really wanted to quiet that down. The routing they've gone for as well, it's a bit strange mounting it so far off the side, but I think they've got that so that clears the truck body that comes with this, because it's not a buggy, it has a truck body, and they've moved the exhaust out so that these exhaust outlets do go past the body, and which will make it look good as it's driving. And that straight outlet from the engine is pretty good for performance. That's quite a sharp corner there, but overall compared to your average exhaust manifold, that's just only got really the one corner in it, so that's pretty good performance wise. And I like that dual output tip. They brace each other because it's quite a weak point, those outputs often on a nitro. They often get bashed in and bent. So you can hear the thickness of that exhaust. It's a high quality piece that makes the difference. The engine, we've got the Tamia FS12. It's a later version with the smaller backplate. That means pull starts are much more available for these. Not sure on the quality. The earlier FS12s were made by OS Japan, so they're really high quality engines. I haven't run too many of these late ones, but that's Tamia FS12 engine. So there you have it. Let me know what you think. Have you run one of these? What do you think about the design of it? That's how Tamia have solved nitro cars. That's their offering, 1/10 scale nitro RC truck. Like and subscribe. Share your thoughts in the comments. Some drop testing on this truck. Oh, that's nice. Actually pretty decent. Pretty well damped, isn't it, for the amount of grief I gave it. But what do you think, guys? Do you think this funny system is gonna mess up the dynamics of this car? I think it is. I mean, if I move the chassis and put a bit of resistance there, it immediately pulls that round, and that's almost touching there already. So yeah, it's an odd one for dynamics. Let me know what you think.